Welcome to Future Stories. We're talking missionary stories today, and I have an amazing guest. We're talking to Kevin, or you would say Elder Wilde if we're going back in time. Tell us where you served and what you spoke.
Back in my mission, those in the south of Mexico couldn't really pronounce my last name that well, so it was always Elder Wilde or Wow.
Yes. My favorite was trying to get them to say the word world. World. Be like, well, no, world.
Yeah. Although I'm not sure how difficult it is for Argentinians to say English words or not, because it just kind of depends. Because, like, for example, my wife had no issue pronouncing my last name.
Oh, really?
When we met, because the north of Mexico is different than the south, and so it's always different, just depending on where it is, and then also the fact that it was where I served my mission was like a highly dense population of ethnic Mayans, and then those like with mixed blood, and it's that also had to do.
Oh, that's fascinating. Oh, I'm so excited to hear some stories. Kevin, what is one of your favorite stories?
So favorite stories, are we talking about spiritual, funny?
So just like it can be all those things. It doesn't have to encompass that. We'll just start with a favorite, and then we'll get into funny, spiritual, and what was the fourth one? Wild. Oh, wild.
But and so I think first one I'd like to talk to was in my second area. It was in a area called Escarcega. So put in perspective, this is I had been in the mission field for about 5-6 months-ish, and I was sent from the top corner of my mission to the bottom left corner. So basically, literally the opposite. And my first area was Cancun, and so that's a very touristy, Americanized place. Even though where I was not the touristy area, it was like basically where the hotel workers lived, and so it was a very poor area. But I was sent down to this area called Escarcega, and this is a very isolated town. So the town is like decent size, about like 50,000 people, but it still had a very small town feel to it. Because one, it was very isolated from other places. Like, for example, I was literally the closest missionaries were literally in another mission than my own district. It was about like a hour and a half bus ride to go see missionaries in my district. When I got there, we had a few recent converts that we got along with. They fed us really well. It was a mother and a disabled daughter, and they were both super nice. Both of them named Guadalupe Rivera, and still keep in contact with them from time to time. And they're just amazing people. Every area of my mission had special parts, but I'd probably say it was my favorite area. Lots of people didn't. Because we're the only missionaries in the city, it's a very big area. But those people, the Rivera family, they gave us a referral to their next door neighbors, the Quintalteyo family. There are 2 parents and 2 children. And it was interesting that we'd get a referral because the father in this family was very religious, was very much Christian. And the first time, like many families in Mexico, they'll listen to people preaching about God because of the general Catholic/Christian base that's in Mexico. Even though I'd only been in the mission about 6 months, I'd always thought, I was like, okay, it's hard to get somewhere with people who are already very religious because they're very much in their beliefs. Now we had a decent opportunity because while the dad was quite into the church, the wife and the children weren't so much. But we decided to talk, and we talked about, Christ, and we talked about the gospel of Christ. And in my mission is that our first lesson wasn't about the restoration about Joseph Smith. It was actually just the doctrine of Christ, what can be found in 2 Nephi 32. At the end of the lesson, I talked to my companion, and I was a junior companion in this companionship, and we kind of felt like it was a little rough because the dad was actually a bit combative. So I didn't think we were actually going to get anywhere. But because the recent converts were next door to them, we kept on getting a positive reinforcement to go to church, and we got invited back, and I was kind of surprised by that. We gradually got them to keep on listening, and we actually visited them several times a week because we had such great experiences with them. Because every time we came by, it was just a little bit more, a little bit more, and we were able to get them to read the Book of Mormon. We were able to get them to go to church. And I think about 2 months later, we ended up baptizing the entire family. And the most surprising part was the dad, Maximo. It was amazing to see, because he actually said until he got baptized, he was actually attending both churches. And so you never see that coming. But it was amazing to see, the change they had in their life, and they ended up getting sealed in the temple as a family, which again which was amazing, because retention in the church in Mexico is not that great, and so you can get a lot of people to agree to be baptized, but the commitment to continue was very much lacking. I still communicate with them on Facebook, and they're really amazing. That was the first and only time that I had like an entire family be baptized at once, and that was really a touching experience. Now, another story I probably want to go into. Well, there's actually two. I could talk about this all night.
Let's do it.
The other one was a brother. This was actually from my first area, and so in my first area, I was still struggling to pick up the language. And this one, I was actually a senior companion. I was made as a senior companion right after I finished training, and then and that was a big responsibility for me, because I still didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was still struggling with the language. I felt comfortable enough to talk about gospel stuff in Spanish, but not much else. And we talked with this. We got a referral for this lady named Fermina, and she was a good investigator. She read scriptures, prayed, came to church. But the big deal was that she was living in in a free union, and she was living with her partner, with her boyfriend. They'd been living together for many years, like decades. Why I hadn't gotten married, I'm not sure. Well, actually, I do know, is because in Cancun, no one's married. No one gets married ever, and it's actually pretty complicated. I mean, you have to get blood tests. You have to do. There's a lot of hoops to jump through in order to get married. Which it's easier to get married here in the States than it is in Mexico, or at least down there. Which again, surprising to me. But to get back to where to the story, we were kind of encouraging her to at least live apart until we can get married. And she kept on telling me is that, well, my partner's a drunk. He drinks a lot. A whole ton. It's like so much that he has to take medication, because his doctors kept on saying is like, if you can't keep this in control, you're gonna die. He has major liver issues, and also that he had run off like other preachers from different religions, like the Baptists kept on trying to come by and get them to go to their church. And Fermina warned us that like if they caught us talking with her, that he would basically run us off the property. And one night we came by to visit, and she wasn't there, but he was. And I was like, ooh. But surprisingly enough, he invited us in, and also he was sober, which surprised me. And he actually knew quite a bit about the scriptures. I was pretty surprised about about the Bible, and he talked to us about how much he didn't want to drink, and how much he actually wanted to make changes in his life. Another thing that Fermina told us is that the neighbors hated them because he was such a belligerent drunk, and like he would get into fights as drunk. Like he felt addicted to drinking, and how much he drank, and how all the doctors told him is like, if you don't stop drinking, you're gonna die. And so we invited him to come to church, and he came. And again, this was very surprising, because from what we'd been told by his partner was that he couldn't stop drinking. And so he came to church, and he was very enthusiastic, and we gave him a Book of Mormon. He started reading it. And the next week we went to go visit him, because we wanted to make some progress, because we saw potential here, because he was actually making his commitments. And we brought someone with us, a mutual friend, one night to go to talk to him. And he said, I really want to stop drinking. I'm going to die if I don't. I have to stop drinking. And the member there wanted us to give him a blessing. And we asked him, if we give you a blessing, do you have faith that God will heal you of this addiction? And he said, yes, I have faith in this. And we gave him a blessing, and he stopped drinking. Cold turkey. Now, I wasn't around to see him baptized, but he did get baptized. The reason why he didn't get baptized while I was there, before I was transferred out, was because Fermina had an error on her birth certificate, and they had to go through the process of getting that changed, and so they couldn't get married. But I did hear about this later because somebody from my generation of missionaries ended their mission in my area, where I started my mission. And I asked him about him, and he said, "Oh, he is the best, and he always helps us with the mission with the missionaries. They always feed us. And I asked if he remembered me. And he's like, yeah, he absolutely remembers you. He's like he says that you were his missionary, and it was just so touching to me that it's because I felt so inadequate, but in the end, I was still able to be the instrument in the Lord's hands, because I'm never gonna say that I performed that miracle, because I know it absolutely was a miracle, but it was the Lord that acted through me, even though I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what I was going through, and I had no idea how things were going to turn out, because again, reason and logic would say that it's like, okay, this guy's not in the position to come to Christ, but the Lord placed him in my way, and that was just amazing, and it truly spoke to me, and it gave me that message that the Lord can help the least among us and make us large in stature and large, and be able to use us as his tools. And so that was, and he said, and the other missionary told me, is like, yeah, he tells people all the time, and yeah, they got married, they got sealed in the temple. It was a major testimony builder to me, and I feel so eternally grateful I was able to be a part of that. There was one more story I wanted to mention. Now, I wasn't here for all of this conversion story, but I was there for the end. I was there for the baptism of the daughters. But
Planting those seeds.
there was a family that lived down the street from where the missionaries lived, and this was in Merida. This was my third area, and I had been in the mission for about a year when this happened. Actually, this was, now come to think of it, this was about 10 years ago. In the most lovely family, there's dad and a mom and two daughters that were they're twins, and they're about, like, I think they're about our age. They're about 20. The dad and the mom were so amazing to us. They always made us food. They always made panuchos. It's very much a Yucatec dish, and it tastes delicious. I tell this story not so much that how much I participate in it, but how much things can happen, and how much lives can be blessed. So the whole entire family got baptized. I was there for the baptism of the two daughters because they were a little more hesitant. And about 5-6 years ago, the mother passed away in this family, and now the family was able to be sealed to each other, and it was a very sad time. But after that, the dad actually reached out to me to talk him through this, and the companion I had at the time, Elder Richards, we were able to talk to him to remind him of the covenants and the promises that come with that covenant. And the two daughters ended up getting sealed in the temple as well, and they have their own families, and that they were able to find members of the church and be able to, and to follow that path. And I know it's not much of a story, but it's just so much that I can see how much the gospel means, and how much guidance can be, and how much the plan of salvation actually means to us. And I've thought about life, I've thought about religion, and I've thought about the comparisons between our faith and others. And the family unit is truly, I can say for sure, is the way that God meant it for us to live. And not only in this life, but in the life to come. Because that's truly the best way that we can live, and it's truly the best way that we can achieve that we can have that immense amount of joy in our lives. I felt it when I married my wife, and I felt it third, like kind of like second hand from when I see these families come to Christ, but I felt it firsthand when I married my wife, and I felt it when my daughter was born. It's truly, I know I can't sound a little nonsensical, but it's truly, it's just what testifies to me that this is the way we're supposed to live. This is how we're supposed to go. This is why God planned for us to come in families. And I'll get more lighthearted here in a bit, but it's because I've been thinking about this a lot, because the more I still keep connections with people I grew up with people that I've served missions with, and people I went to school with. And I see a lot of people fall away from the church and fall away from the gospel, and it saddens me. And I think about what drives people away from the church, whether that be personal conflicts or or political or for whatever reason. And I think back on my life up to this point, and I can think of, I've said this once and I'll say it again, every good thing that I've had in my life, I owe to the gospel. Every good thing that's ever happened to me, I owe to the gospel. And even though I may not understand everything, even though I'm very imperfect and I continue to struggle, I can't have gone through what I've gone through and end up denying it. And so I see people fall away from the church. I see members of my own family fall away from the church, and I can't gone through what I've gone through and never deny it. I can't. My funny story is it's just kind of short and sweet, also kind of sad.
Oh no.
In my second areas, as I said before, Skarsgård is a big area, and so we had bikes, and I remember we had an appointment one time, and we left the bikes out on the lawn, and one of the bikes got stolen, and so that was a bummer. But the first family I mentioned before, the Riveras, the dad actually lent us his bike, because even though he wasn't a member of the church, he was really cool. He was super friendly, and he was really nice to us. And he lent us one of his bikes to use. But then that one ended up getting stolen too. And in the end, after I left, they just ended up taking off the bikes out of that area because it was just too dangerous. Because I mean, we kept on losing the bikes. And I'll have one addendum to the Skarsgård as far as funny stories go, is that the most unusual thing I had in my mission was this dish called mondongo. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it.
Yes.
Cow stomach.
It's disgusting.
And I knew what it was, but I was told what it was by my companion at the time, and I just felt adventurous. Like, this is my mission. This is why I came here to do new things. I mean, that wasn't the only purpose, but I came out here to try new things. And so I start eating it, and I'm just thinking, this is really chewy. I don't like this, but I've got to keep on scarfing it down. I'm gonna scarf down as much as I can, and then there just comes a point. Then I take one bite, and I feel something. I'm like, oh no. So I'm like, I need to use the restroom. I run over and I puke my guts out. It was awful.
Oh my gosh.
And now that I think of that, there's actually one more funny story that I have. And this is from my first area. And so to preface this, virtually all American missionaries get sick in their first month or two because they're not used to the food. And so that hit me hard. Well, I had only been out in the mission for about 3 weeks, and I eat some chicken from a member's place that prepared us food, and I get really, really sick. Like, I'd never gotten that sick in my life, and I haven't since. It got so I puked out everything. I got so bad that I did puke blood. My puke was black at one point. And it was coming out both ends, the blackness.
Jeez.
And I felt so sick. But the mission president came to do interviews. And I had been in my hammock for about a day and a half at this point. And I just did not have the strength to get up. We did exchanges so my companion could go out and still do lessons. And he didn't really believe me that I was really as sick as I was. But it was just awful. And so my companion is like, we're going to these interviews. He would not let me say no, and he would not take no for an answer, even though I felt just awful. But he drugged me down to the stake center. We were waiting for interviews. We waited in the chapel, and I could not sit up straight, so I just laid down. And the mission president's wife talked to me, and I told her what was going on, and she gave me the standard advice: drink water and rest, and also go to the doctor. But at the end of my mission, I talked to the mission president's wife again, and she says, "I remember you. You are the one missionary that was sick and could not stand up straight and sit up straight at the interviews." I was like, "Yes, that's me." It was awful. It was awful, but I mean, what can I say? It's part of the mission experience, the foreign mission experience.
Yes. There was one section I noticed that, because I do 4 sections, one of them was wild. Did you have a wild story before we wrap it up? No cartel stories, Kevin? Come on. Thank goodness, no.
I mean,
Except when
the only cart.
except when Nathan went down there.
I mean, the only cartel story I've ever had was not in my mission. It was after.
Oh, jeez.
That was in Matamoros. And the reason why my wife is still nervous about me going down there.
Oh,
my
geez.
mission was in the safest part of Mexico.
Oh, okay.
So, there were some members of the church that were police officers, and I actually talked to them about that. And they said, it's like, yeah, there is cartel activity here, but it's much more on the down low.
Okay.
Than it is in other places, because out in the peninsula, it's not on a main route from South America to the United States. While there is activity, it's not nearly as pronounced. I mean, the only time I ever felt threatened in my mission was in my first area, that some kids threatened to steal my shoes.
Oh,
It was,
jeez.
and actually, I did get my shoes stolen at one point, but that was because I left my new dress shoes underneath one of the pews, and I never got it back.
Oh no.
And they were brand new shoes. My parents had just sent them to
no.
me.
Did you have to walk home like with your socks on or something?
No, just my tennis shoes. Because I got there because I went there on P Day to play soccer, and I left my dress shoes.
Okay.
My parents sent me a big care package in my first area, and it never got to me. So
Oh,
that was the
no.
last.
Did
so
they
my
try it? Because I heard you put a lot of like spiritual stickers on it.
That didn't keep them.
Oh, jeez.
They stole it anyway.
Oh, wow.
And so my care packages were kind of few and far between because of that.
That's too bad.
And most of the time, my parents just sent me money to buy stuff down there.
Yeah. Well, I hate to wrap it up on that, but do you want to share your testimony in Spanish?
Of course. Pues quisiera compartir mi testimonio por las experiencias que he tenido en mi vida. Yo puedo decir verdaderamente que este es el evangelio correcto, que es la iglesia verdadera, que fue restaurada por parte de que Dios restauró por medio de José Smith, que el plan de felicidad de verdad es real, que las familias son eternas y yo quiero estar con mi familia por la eternidad. Estoy muy agradecido por las enseñanzas de Jesucristo, por la expiación de Jesucristo, por su sacrificio, que podemos arrepentirnos y limpiarnos de nuestros pecados, que podemos regresar con nuestro Padre Celestial. Y sé que nuestro Padre Celestial nos ama y quiere nuestra felicidad, quiere que regresemos con Él, porque somos sus hijos. Estoy muy agradecido y puedo decir que cada cosa buena que tengo en mi vida se lo debo a Él y su evangelio y su iglesia. Testifico que esta es la iglesia verdadera, que tiene un profeta viviente, que nos guía en estos días tan difíciles, que hay tanta confusión y tanto sufrimiento. Si confiamos en Dios y no en la carne de nuestro brazo, que podemos cumplir con el plan que Él tiene para nosotros. Y ese es mi testimonio, y se lo comparto en el nombre de Jesucristo. Amén.
Amen.